Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Pod Theory. I am your host, Jason Cercone, and today it's the showdown. Evergreen versus current content. Which one comes out on top? When laying out the initial plan for your show, an aspect you'll want to consider is whether you want your content to be evergreen or current. Now, you can do a mix of both of these types of content, but you're going to want to evaluate the overall theme of your show and decide which will best fit your approach. Now, before making that decision, let's break down each choice so you have a better understanding of what's in front of you. First off, what is evergreen content? Evergreen content is material that will be relevant for the long haul. Someone could stumble upon it today, tomorrow, or 5 years from now, and it's still going to hold value for them. Now, I get it. Algorithms change, practices evolve, but the framework of your evergreen content is still going to hold up, and it's going to offer a perspective that's useful for the person that finds it. This means that evergreen content is going to stay relevant long after it goes live on the internet for the first time, and that's going to allow you to build traffic from that content over time. The term evergreen, it's probably what you're thinking, it comes from the evergreen tree. The evergreen tree is a symbol of perpetual life because it does not shed its leaves when the seasons change. Evergreen trees stand the test of time, just like evergreen content. Now, implementing evergreen content into your podcast is a great way to communicate with listeners over time because you never know when they may search for something relevant to your podcast. Like I said a minute ago, they may look today, they may look tomorrow, they may look 5 years down the road. If you produce something that helps them solve their problem, that one piece of content holds value in perpetuity. Popular evergreen content structures include how-tos, lists, 10 ways to do XYZ, product reviews, videos, and, of course, podcasts. Determine the best way to utilize this type of content in a way that's relevant to your brand, inject your personality, and you've got yourself a framework for a great podcast. Okay, next, what is current content? Current content focuses on what's happening in the moment, right now, as we speak. The evening news is probably the biggest example of current content I can provide. Content on statistics that will most likely change, or breaking news, or upcoming events, these are all examples of current content. This type of content will be widely consumed while it's relevant, but once time passes, that content won't hold any relevance to the reader other than it's serving as a history lesson. In other words, current content has a shelf life, and if you're optimizing your podcast to be found on search engines like we covered in episode 30 of Pod Theory, the search terms related to your current content will diminish over time. Now, I'm not saying that a current content approach is wrong, because it's definitely not. If you build a podcast that's constantly staying on top of what's new and what's fresh, like fashion trends or politics or sports, then a current content model will hold a lot of value for you. So to answer that initial question, which content strategy comes out on top, evergreen or current? Now, all comes down to what you want your podcast to be. If you're building a podcast designed to help consumers find solutions to their problems, then an evergreen approach is the right one for you. If you're creating a show that's all about what's topical right now in a specific industry or niche, then go all in on a current content approach. For a brand podcast, my recommendation is to utilize both methods. Primarily, your approach should lean towards the evergreen side because you want your content to solve problems for people who then become loyal to your brand and support you financially when the time comes. But you may also be hosting a really cool event in a month's time and you want to use your podcast to promote it. This can be done through an ad or talking about the event on an episode or on a series of episodes and going into more detail about why people should come to your event. If it's mixed in with some evergreen content, then that info about the event may tell a listener that you do really cool things and maybe one day you're going to hold the same event or you're going to hold a similar event. And ultimately, that just draws them in closer to your podcast and to your brand overall. The punchline is this. Determine which strategy is best for what you want your podcast to accomplish. That's how you're going to decide whether evergreen, current, or a mix of both will come out on top for your content strategy. And that's going to do it for this installment of Pod Theory. If you're liking the podcast, I'd love for you to check out my website, jasoncercone.com. There you'll find more useful information to help you up your podcasting game. You'll find ways to connect with me and much more. I humbly welcome you to my online home. Please take off your shoes and grab a cold beer. Good talk. I'll see you back here tomorrow. This has been Jason Cercone on Pod Theory.